Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't show with no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
All right, welcome back in to Lombardi's Legends podcast. I'm very sorry for the technical difficulties. We're going to call this part two. So, Dane, welcome back in here. And before we disconnected, and I didn't even realize I was in the middle of my best take of the season, and nobody heard it. So I don't know if I'll be able to reprise that or not. But if you missed the beginning in terms of the live stream, go back and check out part one. We had about 15 minutes, we got through the injury report, started an initial discussion on scouting report for the 49ers and some of the impact that Eric Armstead's return here will have in 49ers defense and their ability to potentially try to slow down Aaron Jones in this Packer run game. So certainly that'll be a big impact and trying to make the Packers one-dimensional. But let's kind of continue some of the discussion. So scouting report, I'm actually going to cut over the 49ers offense side of football and do the best I can to give the take that no one heard, the best take in the world that no one heard about 10 minutes ago. Dane, I think one of the things that is going to be really interesting is the 49ers have several personnel packages, but the two primary ones that they really like, 21 personnel and 13 personnel. So they run the ball extremely effectively in those three wide receiver sets. They also have a fullback in Kyle Juszczyk that is utilized almost 40% of their plays, probably more than any fullback in the league. So when he's out there, I really expect that we'll have a heavier personnel group. We might even have 5 down linemen with 3 linemen and 2 edge rushers that we've seen in the last couple of weeks that we were both calling for, and that's been effective in somewhat slowing down the run, and then obviously having McDuffie perhaps out there in early downs along with Quay Walker, and in passing down situations maybe that's certainly Devondre Campbell in place of McDuffie. But in those 13 personnel packages, Dane, I think it's going to be a really interesting chess match. The hard thing is if you roll out there and you have your base, and typically the Packers most of this season have not gotten out of having 2 inside linebackers out there on the field. Unfortunately, that's going to create a lot of mismatches in the pass game from those personnel groupings, and it's going to be really difficult because now you've got potentially McCaffrey as a pass catcher out of the backfield, and you've got 3 wide receivers. So that creates a situation where both of your inside linebackers might be in a complete mismatch situation. So, Dane, I think in those, that's the tough thing is if you bring in an extra DB, and let's say you've just got Quay Walker as the only inside linebacker, which we've done in past seasons with mixed results. Now perhaps you match up better in the pass game, but you're really sacrificing a lot of size and as well as the 49ers run the ball from that 13 personnel, you're really creating a lot of channels for that inside running attack that just gouge the Packers, not to create nightmares from the NFC Championship game a couple years ago, but that was just basic geometry, and the Packers got absolutely demolished. So it's what say you? What do you do in that situation? Is it just going to be a matter of we need to get that extra DB out there, and they're just going to have to really be stepping up their physicality in the run game and maybe raise their level of physicality in play and just hope that we can hold serve in the run game in order to create the matchups that we need to defend that personnel package in the passing attack? Or are you going to gamble and have an extra inside linebacker out there and risk that the 49ers can just tear us apart in some different pass looks that they're going to have from that personnel package? So, Dane, I asked you, I said what I expect is we'll have that extra DB, but what would you do if you were on Coach Barry's defensive staff?
Yeah, so I think you have to go the extra DB. I think you're right. And it's going to be just incumbent upon the defensive line to create and do what they can do to allow for, to basically force that and force the 49ers hand. Because I think we've said it every week, Wags, at one point or another, it's we need to take something away. And if they're going to beat us another way, so be it. I've seen the 49ers gash the Packers on the ground enough times over the last decade that I don't ever need to see that again. And if you're telling me it's going to be Purdy or it's going to be McCaffrey to beat the Packers, let's make it Purdy. Okay, that's where I'm at. And I know it's easier said than done because McCaffrey is arguably, or maybe not arguably, the best running back in football. He's extremely dynamic, both catching and running the ball between the tackles. He does it all. But Wags, it's going to take sure tackling by this group, by this Packers group, which has gotten better and better, I feel like, over the course of the last month and a half with their group tackling and with their up-tempo approach to defense. But really, it's going to be, we said it last week, I'll say it again, Kenny Clark is going to just be a paramount importance, Devontae Wyatt, and our old friend TJ Slayton up front, Wags. We need them to be able to hold up against this run game and force the 49ers to pass the football. And they've been very good on both phases this year. Their receivers are talented as well, but all that to say, Wags, they also have 5 losses, right? So, I mean, they're a team that can be beat. As dynamic as they are, they can be beat, but they're very, very challenging team to face. But I think we have to start up front with that extra DB and go a little bit small and just trust in the defensive line that's coming on strong as of late to stop the run and force the 49ers into some, third and long distances.
Yeah, I agree. It sounded a little bit like you said, make Brock Purdy beat us. So I was confused if you thought that it might be better to have a bigger personnel package. But I mean, either way, it is a difficult challenge. And if you meant that, you wouldn't be wrong. By the way, it's just, I think it's a difficult situation when you're looking at trying to match up with McCaffrey as a potential receiver. And then obviously they've got Deebo Samuel. They've got Brandon Ayuk, who's playing at a really high level. And and certainly at tight end, George Kittle is not in his prime, but we've seen what he's been able to do against the Packers over the year. And he's as healthy as I think he's been. So in a 1-game situation, I certainly don't want to give him too many opportunities as well. So I think it sounds like we're on the same page.
It does. Yeah. And actually I want to clarify. I actually think we should have an extra DB instead of 2 linebackers because of how dangerous McCaffrey is out of the backfield. Yeah. That's actually what I mean by that. I think it to your point, I mean, it goes back to how talented they are, right? That's what I mean is I think we are going to have to be able to stop the run with an extra DB, because if we have 2 linebackers, they'll just gash us with McCaffrey, I think, catching the football. So I think you almost have to have that extra DB in there just to take away the passing game and then hope for the best out of stopping McCaffrey with an extra DB. I guess that's what I mean.
I agree. You've got your boundary corners against Ayuk and Deebo, and then you've got your inside slot corners to maybe cover McCaffrey. So to say, like they're going to have different motions and rotations that go in there. But the last thing we want is listen. I love Quay Walker. Love what McDuffie's been doing. I think Campbell is balling. He's doing what he can, but I think he's slowing down. I think he's lost half a step at this point. That's just not a good matchup for any of those guys. If they're trying to chase down McCaffrey, if they're getting matched up against one of those receivers, heck, if they have to drop back in coverage and try to figure out how to cover George Kittle, the 49ers have 4 or 5 mismatches for our inside linebackers this week. So unfortunately, I think just because of that, the Packers would be wise to be able to get more speed onto the field and at least be able to remove a potential weakest link that the 49ers would be able to attack again and again and again. Now, that being said, that does expose them potentially in some different running looks. But I think the Packers are going to have to make some choices, to your point, Dane. And 49ers aren't unbeatable. I agree. But let's see if Brock Purdy can make some mistakes. We talked about how big of an impact turnovers made to the Dallas Cowboys last week. 49ers are sub 500 when they do not force turnovers and turn the ball over one or more times. So it's going to be really incumbent on this defense. Maybe it is as sickening as it is to say, maybe this is a bend but don't break type of week. And situationally, if we can maybe get fortunate enough, force a fumble, can we get an interception from Brock Purdy here in the playoffs? I think those are some of the things that could make a real difference in the defense accomplishing its mission for this week. The defense is not going to hold the 49ers to 20 or less points. I just don't think that's realistic. But can they hold them to maybe 30 or less points? If they're in that like mid-20s range and we force a turnover or two and the offense doesn't turn the ball over, now I really like our chances. So this is a dangerous team, but it's just all going to come down to matchups and situational football. And if we can force a couple of miscues by the 49ers, and that's really what I'm looking for from this defense for the Packers this week in this matchup.
Yeah, the turnover battle is always big, but especially against a good opponent. You said it, that they're just really, really good offensively at protecting the ball. But if we can force those turnovers is massive. And I also, something I've noticed, the teams that have beaten the San Francisco 49ers this season are teams that have been able to get out to an early lead and force the 49ers to play from behind. That is not how this offense is built for the Niners, as good as they've been. I'm looking at the tail of the tape shows if the Niners get down and it does have to go more into Purdy's hands, it becomes a problem. As good as Purdy's been, that's where he's had his problems, right? That's where he's turned the ball over, is when it's a known passing down. The 49ers have some challenges at times. Now, if the Niners are playing from ahead by, 1, 2, or more scores, look out, right? McCaffrey and company, they just have too many weapons. But when they are in a one-dimensional offense, every team struggles with that. But this Niners team, the proof is in the pudding based on the losses that they've had. Get them down, make them chase points. That is our best bet. And it's incumbent on the offense to do that. But Wags, get the turnovers. And Purdy, as good as he's been, and he has been good against the pass rush, if the ball's in his hands, we're doing better. But it does start up front, stopping McCaffrey, limiting him the best of our ability. And Wags, can I ask you on this Packers defense? I do have a question for you. Were you shocked by Joe Barry's defensive calls at all against Dallas? It's like he ratcheted up the tempo about tenfold. And so, A, were you shocked in that last week? And B, can we expect more of the same, or are we going to see good old-fashioned passive Joe Barry this week?
He's coaching for a job, and as well as he's coached the last couple of weeks, it makes you wonder where that's been on a more consistent basis. So it's great and frustrating at the same time, but timely. So I'll give him that. And so we've been as hard on Joe Barry as anyone, particularly this season. I think in terms of our frustration with how he's schemed up and called games. But we got to give him his flowers. The way that he's calling games the last few weeks is, I don't know what changed, but if he continues to do that, it's going to be hard to complain. I can't believe I'm saying this, Dane, but it seems like Coach LaFleur is pretty happy with what Coach Barry's been doing too. So listen, if the Packers keep winning playoff games against 1 and 2 seeds, going on the road, winning playoff games, and the defense does what they did last week and the week before and the week before, it's pretty hard to argue that Joe Barry shouldn't keep his job. This is a results-based business, and certainly he deserved a lot of heat. I'm not going to retract anything I said personally for some of the heat that I was giving him throughout this season. But at the same time, as loath as I am to say this, he deserves some credit too. But Dane, one thing I did want to ask about the defense is on the defensive front. We haven't really gotten as much pressure, particularly last week. Got some great pressure against the 49ers, got some pretty good pressure against the Bears and Justin Fields. Last week, as good as the defense was, I thought it was a lot of mix of coverages, and the back end of the defense deserved the lion's share of the credit for what they were forcing things to do. Not saying the defense front got no pressure on Dak, but just not as much as we had seen in previous weeks. 49ers, certainly Trent Williams, one of the best left tackles in the league, but across their front, they've given up some pressures. They've given up some sacks this year. They're not one of the best offensive lines in the league. In fact, they're in the lower 10 in terms of number of sacks and pressures. So is this a week, and how big of a difference could it make if that defensive front with 4 and 5 man pressures can not only hold up against a running game, but can get some pressures against Brock Purdy in this past game?
I mean, all the difference in the world. I mean, so we'll say it, and you said it earlier on Inigbari. We hope he's well. Obviously, it sounds like it's a pretty tough knee injury for him, and he's been really good in his second year. But would this not be like classic Packers 2023/24 if Brenton Cox just blows up this week? You know what I mean? Like, and because they're going to need guys to step up and play and get some pressure. But you're right. And I think it goes back to the challenges the Niners have when they are playing from behind, right? It all marries together. Is if they're playing from behind, more pressure goes on that offensive line. They're not able to rock forward before the snap, so to speak, in their stance and, just go downhill. Now they're being a little bit more passive, catching pass rushers, and that's not necessarily this 49er offensive line forte. So it could be critically important if the Packers force Purdy to drop back and force this offensive line to consistently have to pass block for Brock Purdy. So that is completely true. But that being said, Wags, we've seen an up and down and a mixed season from this Packers defense on third and distance, right? We've seen some really, really bad Packers third down defense where they've allowed way too many yards and way too many first downs on critically long down and distances. But then we've also seen some really, really good stuff, particularly as of late from this Packers defense where they're able to get off the field. This is the week where there just can't be mistakes. There can't be miscommunication on the back end. There can't be blown coverages. And I know, listen, it ain't fair, but the NFL ain't fair, and this is too good of an opponent. And there's 8 teams left in the league right now vying for a Super Bowl, and the Packers are one of them. So if they want to go to the next round, is it fair? No, but they're going to have to play pretty close to flawless defense this week to beat the 49ers. And I'm being honest, that's just what it is. And it's not that I don't think they can win. And in fact, we'll give our predictions a little bit, but they're going to have to be really damn good. They're going to have to be on their A game against an offense that had a bye week last week, and the Packers defense was out there for a ton of snaps, especially late. So how do they bounce back from there? So that's the other piece. And Wags, I want to ask you another question that kind of relates to the pass rush and pass rushing Purdy, but more to Purdy himself. Not only did they have a bye week last week, the 49ers, but he was held out in week 18 as well. So all of a sudden it's been 3 weeks since Purdy has played quarterback in the NFL. And, I think it's a fair question to ask because us as Packer fans, we've been on the other side of this, right? In some years, the Packers have been the front running team that have had a bye week, and we've questioned, hey, do they play? Do they not play? Who do you hold out? Are they going to be rusty? So if we've asked that of ourselves over the years, I have to ask you and ask that of the 49ers, is 3 weeks off too long for Purdy? And could he potentially, the timing be slightly off after that long? I know he's been getting his reps, but live game reps are a lot different than practice reps. So does that play into this at all?
Well, we'll find out. And the Packers are going to want to get off to a fast start, regardless. This is a game that if the offense can get off to a fast start, much like they did last week, and avoid the 49ers matching them or taking a lead early, that's going to be a big key in this game. So if they're rusty, yeah, let's take advantage of that. And certainly it could be a factor. We've seen it an awful lot, not just, specific to the 49ers or the Packers, but across the league. And it becomes a big, almost a cliched talking point of, well, should have they held them out or shouldn't have they? The answer is depends. Depends on how they play. So
Sure.
it's going to be interesting to see. Are they firing on all cylinders in that first or second drive offensively, or are the Packers able to get off the field, maybe force them to punt or hold them to a field goal in their first 2 or 3 drives versus giving up touchdowns? So we'll see what happens. One thing I will say, Dane, that is different from some, maybe not completely different, because we saw Jimmy Garoppolo in some playoff matchups here too as well. But Brock Purdy doesn't really run the ball. So at least we don't have that dynamic. Not saying that he can't scramble for a 5-yard first down and slide if he really needs to, but that's just not really a big element of his game. He had less than 150 yards rushing all season. So not a guy that's going to try and get out and move and try to pick up chunk yards on the ground. Maybe he doesn't really need to be fair. But at the same time, it's not a big element of Brock Purdy's game. So maybe that's something that they can do too, is with some of their pressures, can they force him to have to move around, even if it's just in the pocket, and make some decisions of whether he's going to try to force the ball, or if he's going to try to tuck and run it. And sometimes if he's not comfortable making those types of decisions, that might be something that could play into the Packers defensive favor as well. Dane, why don't we shift gears? Let's get into the offensive side. And I really need to, I've been waiting and waiting, but we have some excellent questions that popped up in the chat as soon as we started part 2 here. First one is from husband of Test Trent, apparently. It's follow-up comment says he's logged into his wife's YouTube, but who will be this week's go-to receiver? I know we like to mix it up every week, but what matchup do we like? This feels like a big Jaden Reed game. Well, husband of Test Trent, I love that observation. You're going to get no observation from me. I'm going to turn this over to you, Dane, in a second, but we've got a follow-up comment from Dean Lipperman in our Facebook chat saying, looking for Jaden Reed to have a big day. So Dane, it doesn't have to be just Jaden Reed, but it does seem like with the dearth of talent that we've seen emerge from this pass catching group, and all of them finally being healthy together at the same time, that does seem to be an element of this Packer game plan. And so last week it was Romeo Doubs. Previous weeks, obviously Wicks had a big touchdown, not necessarily a volume of throws. But previous weeks we've seen Jaden Reed has been the guy. Christian Watson still hasn't necessarily put his stamp, even though he's played the last couple of games. But Dane, what say you? What is the game plan? What's the key matchup that you're looking at this week in terms of the Packers offensively and in their pass attack?
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers, with that pass rush, the teams have tried to get the football out quick against this 49ers. But the challenge, of course, is with those 2 inside linebackers, particularly Fred Warner there, it's hard to kind of hit those across the middle, right? It's hard to exploit the middle against this team. And that's something Jordan Love's done really well, right? Is he's been able to exploit the middle for a lot of teams. So the question becomes, how do the Packers take on a defense where the pass rush is really, really good? They like to play that zone coverage, and they like to just beat you up front and get to the quarterback. What I think Packers are likely going to do is we've seen Packer running backs do really nice job the last couple of weeks of pass pro. We've also seen some nice chip blocks from Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave before going out into different formations and into different plays. But all of that's to say, Wags, I'm going to kind of surprise some people, I think, because I think the Packers think right now that they can continue to do what they've been doing and beat anybody in the league. I really think that that's what they think they're going to do. I don't think that they're going to try to play, three-step drop football. I think that they're going to make the 49ers beat them, and then they can adjust from there. And because of that, and why I say that is I think it's Christian Watson's week. Packers have had a ton of receivers doing a lot of different things. This is a week where we're going to need to expect big-time players or guys that are expected to be big-time players make big-time plays. And Jaden and Bo Melton and Wicks and Romeo, all those guys have been doing it for the last few weeks. What we've noticed from Christian Watson is sometimes when he comes back from injury, it takes a couple of weeks for this guy, right? To kind of like get back in the swing of things. And then all of a sudden, in bunches, Christian Watson explodes. This feels like a week. It's going to be about 60 degrees. It's going to be wet out. I think it's going to be raining. Do not be surprised. Jordan Love, a California kid, comes out slinging the football against the 49ers, because I think that is what nobody totally expects. I think everybody thinks, the Packers are going to want to control the clock. And don't get me wrong, that all sounds great. But I think at their best, it's when the Packers attack downfield, and they're going to try to impose their will of attacking downfield against the 49ers or anybody else in the league. So for that, I think Christian Watson is a big-time speed guy. And I think that when they find the 49ers getting into some of that man-to-man coverage, they're going to see if Jordan Love can exploit the man-to-man coverage of the San Francisco 49er DBs and have Christian Watson beat them over the top. So I think Watson, it's going to be a big week for him. He has the potential for it. Yes, Jaden Reed, the 49ers have been exploited in the slot. How can we ever bet against Jaden Reed? It's impossible. Your boy Jaden Reed's been phenomenal so many games. But I'm going to go outside the box a little bit with Christian Watson. I think that he runs a nice route tree. I think that he can get some wins in the slant. I think that he's going to be able to leave some guys in coverage when it becomes man-to-man. So Christian Watson this week is going to be a huge week for him. And it could be critically important for this Packers offense for Christian Watson to have a big week, because if he doesn't, even with the talent all around, Wags, it's going to be a team effort. Somebody's probably going to blow up. For some reason, my gut tells me it's Christian's week.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I hope so, because honestly, that's what this Packer offense needs, is to have a vertical threat in this type of game. And I completely agree with you. Let's dust off the game plan that we had against Detroit on Thanksgiving, following week against the Chiefs. And this is going to be this. I'm not suggesting to limit the opportunities for Aaron Jones, but early on in this game, I think we need to be very aggressive passing the ball. Completely agree with you. The Packers really exploited the intermediate middle of the defense last week against Dallas. The 49ers have some guys in the second level that you could argue maybe one of the top 2-3 groups of linebackers with Fred Warner, and Dre Greenlaw manning kind of that second level from the linebacker core. And surprisingly, our old friend Oren Burks has carved out a really good role with the 49ers as well. So it's going to be a little bit harder sledding, I think. With that, they've got a solid cornerback group and DB group on the back end at safety as well. Not saying that the Packers aren't going to find opportunities that they won't try to attack that part of the defense, but this is not what they were facing with the Cowboys last week with the 49ers. I think certainly Christian Watson could play a key element, but honestly, Dane, the vertical guy that they used last week was Bo Melton. It was only one. And they didn't really need to go back to it because they were just gashing the Cowboys in every other way. But I think Bo Melton could be another guy to just really keep an eye on, not just vertically, but underneath and what he's been able to do. He's been quieter the last couple of weeks, but he had a couple of really big games at the end of the season when we really needed it. And I think this could be a week that Bo Melton finds some additional opportunities as well. We might have to go a little bit farther down in that wide receiver depth chart. But ultimately, there's really no team in this league that has the depth in the DB room to cover 4 or 5 guys. And the 49ers are no exception. Additionally, you talked about the pass rush. One of the things that Packers have been doing really effectively is giving help to their guys. As good as their offensive line's doing, they're chipping on the edge with those pass rushers. And that was what they did so effectively against Micah Parkins last week. And I expect them to do again against Boza, against Chase Young, against all of these 49ers pass rushers on the edge this week, whether it's a tight end or whether it's Aaron Jones in the backfield. They're going to make sure that those guys are available to chip and to support and slow down that pass rush. They've been very effective in being able to do that and giving Jordan Love just enough time. Certainly the offensive line deserves the lion's share of the credit, but they're getting good support from those guys. And that's what they were able to do against the 49ers in their last matchup. Certainly it was one of those things where we forget Yosh Nijman, first career start. And he's not going to be starting this week. Don't get me wrong. But first career start was against the 49ers at San Francisco. And we said, boy, that's going to be a tough matchup. And he got some help, but they were able to devise a game plan to slow down Nick Bosa and that 49ers pass rush. Maybe not completely shut him out, but slow him down and limit those opportunities. And I think the Packers learned a lot from that. And I would be pretty surprised if they didn't have a similar type of approach to trying to slow down this 49ers pass rush this week.
Do you see more movement at the line of scrimmage? We've seen Jaden Reed. We've seen a lot of motion around the line of scrimmage. Do you think we're going to see more tease of that? I'll give LaFleur and company a massive amount of credit. So after that end around game where there was about 10,000 end arounds to Jaden Reed, they've really departed from a lot of that. You still see some of the looks, but largely they have been going more attacking and less side to side. I think against this 49ers defense, a big mistake we can make is to be going more horizontal. It's just a fast defense. It's not what I'm looking to do. I want to see this Packers team attack upfield. But do you expect to see more motion this week? Do you see a lot of tight end play, a lot of 12 personnel? Do you think it's going to be a little bit of everything? Because last week, Wags, I thought was a masterfully called game by Matt LaFleur. He just seemed like he had the Cowboys on their heels from the start of the game, and they never were able to settle in.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to attack upfield, whether that's intermediate or vertical. The 49ers, you can't just have them cover, 15 deep and 20 wide. That's not going to work against this defense. You need them covering 30 deep and 15 wide, or 30 deep and 20 wide. It's a square footage thing. You need to make them space a little bit more. And that's something the Packers have been doing a brilliant job offensively for really the last 6, 8, 10 weeks. So no reason to expect that to change now, Dane. I think that's a great observation. It's really, I think, been a matter of trust in both Jordan Love and in these young receivers. And then certainly in the last 3-4 games, as they've gotten healthier and healthier from a pass catching standpoint, that opens up a lot more possibilities as well. So Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, those guys could be a bigger element of the pass catching game this week as well. Certainly Musgrave, big catch and touchdown last week. I think as they get more healthy, Musgrave particularly, that can expand some of the different things that they're going to try to do from a play calling standpoint to try to keep this 49er defense off balance. Tight ends can be so crucial when you've got a talented pass rush. You can't overuse that short passing game, because then the 49ers will just attack downhill, and then all of a sudden you're dumping off on those checkdowns and you're only getting 1 or 2 yards. That's not really an effective play. But if they've got a safety valve and have some green space in front of them, I think Jordan Love is making those reads now and can effectively find where it needs to put the football in order to give some opportunities for some yards after catch. So sneakily, I think Musgrave and Kraft could maybe get a little bit more volume this week in terms of the number of targets that they're getting, and some opportunities to pick up some nice chain moving catches as well.
Man, I'll tell you what. You mentioned that. You mentioned Love. Have you seen? When was the last time you've seen a quarterback see the field as well as he has over the last few weeks? It just seems like he's spotting the open guy, and that's really lended itself to this explosion of so many different pass catchers. I think the Packers have 5 or more pass catchers that have 90 plus yards in a game. I mean, it's a pretty incredible stat when you think about it. Where and we saw it last week with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, right? We're, I think, accustomed to as Packers fans sometimes watching an offense with a quarterback going through a wide receiver. And this has been just totally different, where Jordan's been able to just attack the open guy, takes what the defense gives him, and is just completely confident in his ability and the ability of his receivers and pass catchers to just make plays. So I just want to highlight that, because it really is a week to week. It could be any guy's game, right?
Yeah.
Any one of these guys could pop up.
I just want to ask you, can you paraphrase what offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich said this week? Because I mean, it's interesting. I don't want to get into a past seasons who was quarterbacking thing, but I'd love for you to paraphrase that, because I think it's worth talking about a little bit, and why this offense is hitting another gear. So, Dane, I'm not sure if you remember or can paraphrase what he said. Yeah, go ahead.
Not only do I remember, Wags, it's not quite my my wallpaper, my phone, but it's pretty darn close right now. But Stenavich this week was talking about this season compared to past seasons. And you would talk about how in past seasons, Rodgers would make tons of checks at the line. All sorts of things were kind of going on at the line. And afterwards, you kind of have to you didn't really know what happened until afterwards, right? You'd have to kind of verify and see what happened based on the communication that was happening at the line. Whereas Jordan Love, they're basically saying Jordan's running the offense, right? Jordan's making the checks. He's doing what he needs to do, but he's not making any crazy wild audibles or anything along those lines. He's playing within the offense, playing within himself, and we're seeing the benefit of that with Jordan Love. Is that fair to say, Wags? I mean, I think that's roughly what we're hearing.
But I mean, it makes so much sense looking back on it now, why the Packers could have those lulls where they were struggling offensively, because there was no cohesion in terms of what adjustments are we making, or how can we build off of the plays when you don't know what the quarterback's checks are and what they're calling. It's really hard to be able to bring all of those elements together when you're calling plays. And there's nothing wrong with audibles. Listen, there's multiple options on pretty much every play, whether it's, which direction you're going to run the ball, or if it's a pass, run, look. And so Jordan's making checks and calls. And I know that's not what you were saying, but that said, they're within what they're doing. Yeah. So now the offensive coaching staff, even when they maybe have an unsuccessful series, they know what's happening on the field, and they can proactively start to make some of those adjustments for that next series. Whereas I think in past seasons, it required being able to, get to the sideline, call on the phone, or talk to the quarterback, talk to the offensive line. And then by that time, you don't really have a lot of time to be able to figure out what those adjustments are going to be, or maybe the communication just wasn't that there. Great to begin with. So, so I that's not me trying to kill the previous quarterback, but listen, it clearly, the results show that this makes a difference, and certainly you've got to get a lot of credit, and obviously having this young talented wide receiver core develop the way they are and how they're getting open and buying in to what that scheme is makes a heck of a difference as well. So, Dane, any other things that you want to highlight about this 49er defense against the Packer offense?
No, before we get into our Leap Vodka X Factors, though, I do want to highlight a mentality thing. We saw a couple things come out this week about the wide receivers and just their mentality in this offense. And before, we go to war on Saturday night, I think it's important to note now, Jaden Reed, there's a wonderful conversation that was said between Jaden Reed and Aaron Jones that was captured, where Jaden basically is like, you're the reason I'm playing so hard. And he's talking to Aaron Jones, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but basically like, I block for you. Right. I really admire how you play the game. And Bo Melton said something along the line. I can't remember exactly, but he's like, this is just how we do it in the Packers. We block. We block for our guys. We take pride in what we're doing. We take pride in every part of this game. So, keep that in mind, folks, when we're going into our predictions and going into this week, that the 49ers are a gnarly defense, but they've been beat before. And this is a Packer offense that's coming off some major wins and are as talented as we've seen in a number of years in Green Bay. And I think they're going to go out there and they take pride in every phase of this game. I think they want to go and prove a lot more people wrong. So I think that's really how I want to impress upon this 2024 Packers offense is that, yeah, they're youthful and yeah, Jordan's been incredible, but these guys, they're not just pass catchers. They're also going to go punch some DBs in the mouth, metaphorically, football speaking, and try to crack open some big runs for Aaron Jones in the running game. So I'm so excited because, in past seasons, sometimes I've gone, oh, this is going to be a challenge. I'm throwing that language out. It's an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity for this team. And this is an opportunity for these guys to shut up another round of haters and go on and win a division game again, or a division round game against an incredibly talented team.
Yeah, I love that. Dane, why don't we get into our Leap Vodka X Factors and score predictions for this week's game? And I'm going to just lead off on this one so that you can't steal my guy. I don't think you would anyway, but not this week. Not this week. Offensively, I'm just going to go with Luke Musgrave. Got the big touchdown last week. And I meant what I said earlier. I think he has some opportunity, and I'm not talking 8 to 10 catches or targets, but I think he could have a little bit more volume this week as a guy that we can get the ball to and pick up 5-10 yards at a crack and make some big chain moving catches. And I think he's going to get a little bit of a larger share of this offensive game plan this week. Certainly they wanted to limit his snaps in his first week back a couple weeks ago. He got a little bit more last week, and I think he's someone that could pose some mismatch opportunities against this 49ers defense. As fast and talented as they are, Luke Musgrave is someone that can give some different looks. He's just a different type of tight end and a different type of player. And I think you need to have all hands on deck in terms of the blue chip type players. I don't think Luke is there yet in terms of production, but in terms of talent, he has that potential. And so let's see if he can rise to the occasion this week. I think he will. And I think he's going to get a few extra targets and could make some key plays to move the sticks this week and come up with some big catches.
That's great. Tremendous. Oh, it's the G way. Tess Grant's husband says in the chat. I think that's what Bo Melton. Wags, I love that selection of Luke Musgrave. Talk about a tough guy, right? Coming back from the lacerated kidney. I think it's a great choice because he's the kind of guy, if he's moving the chains for this Packers team, especially in the second half, things are going right? So that's just a great choice for your Leap Vodka offensive X Factor. I'm going to go, it's going to be a wet game. It's going to be, 50-something degrees, San Francisco weather. We've got a guy on this team who's the engine. He's the leader of this team. And he's a guy who has had some huge games, but he's also had some trouble in some playoff games. And last week was awesome. He's going to build on it this week, and that's Aaron Jones. I'm going to go with a star of our team this week for Leap Vodka Offensive X Factor because we talk about being aggressive. And all of that's so important. Passing the ball, so important. But Wags, this 49ers defense, when they've been losing games this year, the opposing offense has been putting up 100+ rushing yards on them. It's critically important based on past precedent of this 49er team to run the football. It's going to be Aaron Jones. I want Aaron Jones to run all over the Niners. He played so well last week. Ball control. Do it. Just do it, Aaron, right? We have all the support in the world. He's our leader. Lead us through this one. So Aaron Jones could be my Leap Vodka X factor in the pass game, the run game, pass block game. Put the ball in that man's hands and let him run.
Yeah, I think that's a great selection. And if Aaron Jones has a big week, what a difference that will make. So, definition of X factor when you look at it from that perspective. Dane, on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Kenny Clark. And I'll tell you what, if Kenny can find some opportunities to disrupt this 49er offense, both in the run and pass game, it's sky's the limit in terms of what we're able to accomplish. 49ers are still going to put up some points, but realistically, if Kenny Clark up the middle can come up with a opportune and monster game, and listen, he plays at a high level pretty much every week, but we know there's weeks when he just kind of gets a little bit more push, getting more pressure, maybe getting a sack, maybe getting some tackles in the backfield. And so he can be a key disruptor in terms of the timing and rhythm of what the 49ers are trying to do offensively. And I think that could pose some real challenges for Brock Purdy if he's able to do that. That could be one of the reasons why the Packers are able to force a turnover or two this week, whether he's the one that actually gets the sack or actually forces the fumble. If he gets Brock Purdy off of his spot in a hurry, Kenny Clark could be a big part of the defense doing their part to try to do enough for this Packers to come away with a win. And for that reason, I've got Kenny Clark as my defensive X factor this week.
Great choice, man. This team, right? We need to stop it all, and it all starts up front with Kenny. So love it. Your Leap Vodka defensive X factor. Wags, I went with Aaron Jones on the offensive side. Don't normally go with the big stars, right? For our Leap, you went with Kenny, who's definitely a premier player for the defense. I'm going to stay with the stars as well on defense. It's Rashawn Gary. This is a week for Rashawn Gary to be our Leap Vodka X Factor. The late, great Kevin Green in the Super Bowl told Clay Matthews right before he forced a fumble in a critical moment, it is time. And Clay went and took care of business. Last week, Wags, Rashawn approached Jordan Love on the field and said, it is time. And I believe this is a week for Rashawn Gary. Okay. It's been a quiet couple weeks from a stat perspective. He's been good, but he doesn't have those sack stats. This is a week where the 49ers, if we are going to beat them, it's because we're sacking the quarterback. We're making him uncomfortable. It's because we get turnovers. It's because we're stopping them on down and distance. And we need to play a flawless game or close to a flawless game. And we need our stars to show up. We've seen Reggie White show up in critical moments. We've seen Clay Matthews show up in critical moments. Rashawn Gary is this team's version of Reggie White, this team's version of Clay Matthews. It's Rashawn Gary. He's the leader of this defense, Wags, as far as I'm concerned. This is the week. Rashawn Gary is my Leap Vodka X Factor because it is time for Rashawn Gary to just destroy an opposing offense. And this is the week in the division round to just completely throw everything against the wall. Rashawn Gary, go after Purdy, get those sacks, get those pressures, force those turnovers, win this damn football game. Rashawn Gary, my Leap Vodka X Factor.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Divisional round game on the road, in the playoffs, number one seed is at home. You need your best players. You need your blue chippers to rise to the occasion. They've got plenty of blue chippers. We've got some as well. Who plays better, who executes better, who rises to the occasion. And so I love those picks. I love all our picks, frankly, Dane.
Yes,
so
good.
Score predictions. Do we have some score predictions in the chat? I don't see any, but go ahead and throw some score predictions in the chat as we get that queued up here for this game. Dane, would you like to lead off? I let off on the X Factors. Would you like to lead off this week on the score prediction?
I will, Wags. You touched upon this at the top of the pod about, like what's kind of that number, right? What does it take for this Packers team? I think this is going to be, it ain't going to be like last week. All right. It ain't gonna be that. It's gonna be a game. It's gonna be an absolute battle. Shadid in our chat dropped 35-28. Packers win. I love it. Thank you, Shadid. Wayne's dropping 48 again for the Packers, 34 for the Niners. I love it, Wayne. I hope it's that much of a distance, but I think it's gonna be very close. And big moments, big players show up in big moments, Wags. And I think that this is a game where it's going to be close all game. And I think there might be a bit of a swing here and there, but you're not going to want to get up and go to the bathroom, folks, during this game, right? You're going to want to watch every play. I think there's going to be turnovers on both sides. I think it's just going to be a battle. It's a slog. This is the game for that. Wags, I think Jordan Love's going to have the ball in his hands late in the game. I think Packers are down. And I think Jordan Love's going to get him in field goal range. I think Anders Carlson is going to kick field goal. He's going to win this game for the Packers. I think Packers are going to win 30-29. I don't know how that number gets to that number, but it's 30-29. Anders Carlson drills it in the time that we need him most. And Jordan Love and this upstart Green Bay Packers offense and defense take care of business. And we're flying wherever the hell we're flying next, but who cares? Because the Packers are one game away from the Super Bowl. But it starts Saturday night.
You're not going to believe this, Dane, but I also, as I was thinking about the script and the narrative of how I was going to do my score prediction, decided that Anders Carlson is going to redeem himself in your eyes and in Packer. Slightly different score. I've got the Packers 34-31. It's going to be a tie game, so it's not going to be a kick that he needs to make in order for us to not lose, but tie game 31 all, and he goes down and we get a key kick. I think 49ers will get the ball back. It's not going to be as time expires. It's going to be a nail biter for about the last 50 to 60 seconds, but we close out the win. I think Rashawn Gary comes up with your X factor sack on that final drive, and that's the difference. Packers hold on 34-31. Love the predictions in the chat. We've got Packers. I think we're all right around that same golden number that you mentioned, Dane, for how many points we need to put up and what the defense needs to do just enough to slow down this 49ers offense. And I think if we get the 49ers right around that 28 to 31 point range, I'll tell you what, the way that this Packers offense is playing and as good as this 49ers defense is, I like our chances. I think we're going to be right in the game. Does it mean that we do enough to get enough? I don't know, but I'm very confident. I'm very optimistic. I'm not going to pick against the Packers. This young team right now got a lot of love for what we've got going out there on the field. And certainly I'm going to ride with them to the end. So let's go, Dane. Let's go. Let's see how we can do out west this time around. This is a different group, different regime, different players. So let's see if they can put their stamp on it and continue this magical run that they've been on.
Yes, sir. Tess Trent's husband, maybe we should say 28-27 Pack. Close one all day long. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, Wags. I mean, this is what it's about, man. This is what it's about. And you know, if you told us before the season started, we were optimistic. You can go back and listen to early on in the year. We said we think this team can make the playoffs. We said it before the season started. And they went ahead and they've defied a lot of expectations, I think, from everybody, ourselves included, with how good they've played down the stretch. But Wags, they're in it. They're in the dance, right? And they've already won one. So don't tell me they can't do it. This is a team that has maybe that right mix of youthful confidence. I'll put it that way. There's a youthful confidence with this team that understands the stakes, but aren't bogged down by the expectations. And that is a beautiful mixture that this team has right now. Matt LaFleur is leading this team largely on the back of Jordan Love and this offense and this defense and these critical moments. So Wags, this is what it's about. And folks, it's just, this is the best. This is what it's about. Do not take this for granted. The Packers are 2 games away from going to the Super Bowl. They've got to take business against the 49ers on Saturday night.
I love it. All right. Well, folks, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for bearing with us through some of the technical difficulties early on tonight. Thanks for adjusting to the time change, the program change that we had. Love all of you for joining us. As always, be legendary and go Pack
go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I wish